Yes, there are two computers on the table. Let me explain. This one I have featured last week, depending on when you're seeing this, obviously. And if you haven't seen this, this is the Olivetti M6-460. Go up there or find the link in the description. Before you watch this, you need to watch that episode first, because this comes together. Let me try to briefly explain. So when we saw this computer and we looked inside it, it's broken. Everything is cracked inside. Due to shipment or something, I don't know. We noticed that at the end that the motherboard was not the motherboard that was supposed to be inside here. It was a motherboard coming from this series. This is an M4. This is the 65, sorry. And what I realized at the end of the video is that somebody has taken a motherboard from this and put it in there. There's more to the story. I think a year, maybe 1.5 years ago, I actually required these two computers together, I realized. And after I shot this episode, I went over here to this computer, had a peek inside, just wanted to maybe prepare for this upcoming video. At that time, I didn't realize this comes together. I cannot tell you why. Somebody took this and did this. So this is the paper for that computer. This is the paper for that computer. And as it is, on the motherboard, it's like this. So, again, you need to watch this episode. Go down in the description, find the link, watch this first, so you know what's in here, because this is going to go over there. And what had to be in there, which comes from here, that goes in there. So this episode is swapping stuff around. A brief disclaimer in the beginning, I have looked at this. I even found a note when I arrived this saying that the power supply is completely dead. So it's not going to work. So we need to deal with the fact that I only have the power supply from this one, which I will put over here when we're testing both of the motherboards to see if it's working. And as you may see, I have opened this one up over here because I needed to look inside. And yes, I found the motherboard. It is in here. Again, don't know why this has been swapped around. I don't know. It's also very bad inside. It's cracked. Everything is cracked. So it's going to be up the hill. So after you watch episode this one in the description, come back to me and we will have a look inside this one. Okay, let's figure this out. And well, I already have. Let me start by saying, yes, this is the M4. This is the one I wanted to look at today. This is the M6, the one we have been looking at. Remember to look at the previous video. Still, the description, you know, link to this. So, I have cleaned this, took everything apart, just like I did with this one over there. And some could maybe make some comments and comments about, well, why don't you not just take off this and swap it to there? Because you actually can. You can, sorry, you can punch these out like this, and I could just put it there, and then we were done, like done. So yes, that would have been a possibility, and yeah. The other thing, which is the thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do this, okay? So I'm not moving anything inside over to the other, because the casing, everything is still the same. And I will actually assume this is what has happened to these two computers that I was given 1.5 years ago or so. So, because the serial number, when I look at the serial number, I look them up from other computers with the same model number. That kind of like series numbers is the same. So it seems seriously that this is what has happened. So this is what I'm doing. Okay, so this one is now done. This also means that the previous video, I will change the description and image on my YouTube to show this. And on this YouTube video, it's gonna be this one. Okay, so as I have tested all this, we went through this, we just renamed it the wrong thing. We briefly need to have a talk and have a look inside this so we know what we're dealing with today. And yes, it is now officially the Olivetti M6-460 that we'll be looking at. And I'm very eager to see this item down here, which is the sound card extension that you can have had. So let me rip out stuff, show you the motherboard, and have a brief talk about this computer, and we will take the power supply and see if we can get this up and running. Heads up, behind me everywhere, kind of like all the bits and pieces, chips and stuff. I'm trying to glue this together. This will take days. So this is all over the place now, and I cannot put it in while we're doing all of this. So we just need to be aware of that we are missing some of the pieces for the actual computer, but eventually I'll bring it all back, and then I will have two computers that I need to be very careful with when I'm taking these around me. So let's move the camera and look inside. I've taken the two computers on the table and opened them up because I think, let me just please explain, this one is the M4. The 65, this is the M6-460. And what we did, we took the casing, they're over here, and we swapped them around. I have another thing I need to tell you. I looked at the keys that were in the back of this, this cabinet, yeah. And I punched in the key for this over here, and it actually fits. So we were correct in just swapping the top casing around. So that was the deal with this. I just briefly wanted to tell you about the motherboards in the previous episode, which was about this computer. I actually didn't go all through the motherboard, so I just briefly want to talk about the motherboards. So we have the Razer card here. On the Razer card, the power goes in. There's a coin battery here with 3 volts that is sorted back to this card. This holds 4. Over here we'll come back, there's the other one for the other computer. So very briefly, because I made a tiny mistake. So when it comes to the memory on this board, this is the memory, this is bank 0. These 4 ones, I shouldn't use my fingers. These 4 ones, these are the parity checks. So this is bank 1 holding 4 megabytes. This is additional 4 megabyte with parity check over here, and they are on both sides of this. If this computer is running, I want to transfer this over here, come back to that. So memory for the video controller, which was up here. Just a tiny little notice is, I hope you can see it, this is for a CD-ROM drive, this is for IDE hard disk, and this is for the floppy disk drive. And this board is the BA277. This didn't run when we was testing it, and it now runs. I put some oil in it and it's running, but I need to find my glue gun and glue this back together here. That finished the board. This card goes here, sits in here, and the power supply goes here. let me just briefly talk about all the gluing that's been happening. So this is a mess. This is the one that sits here, has the loudspeaker. The green light is for power, the yellow one is for hard disk activities. This goes there on the card, like this. It's not quite the same over here. So I've glued as much as I can. All of this has been glued inside and outside because it's really fragile. I glued these, they were also broken. On this one I've only found that piece which still is missing. This one was broken off, so it will fit here, but it's not going to be pretty. I can't clip it in, so as there is some hot glue in from the beginning on here, I will mount this here with this. This doesn't fit because it's also broken. All this it's supposed to be snipped in here, and over here that's broken off. I can't find that. So once this is seated here, I will put some hot glue down there and there, so this is solid, and we can move it over here. And I will put some glue in the front to hopefully that this will be fitting here. Obviously the battery also needs to be glued on the motherboard. We're now done with this. Again, the M4-65. Let me take this briefly away. And let's have a brief look at this. So if I take this off the back pane like this, there we go. So this motherboard, which is now the real thing, the one that we were talking about from the beginning on, there is a passive Razer card that sits up here. This area again, we will have the power supply. The power supply is directly to the motherboard. This motherboard is called BA2004. Originally there was a 2001, 2 and 3, and they were then deprecated and they substituted with a 2004 and 2005. Onto this board you could have had an add-on, which is the sound card. Sadly I don't have the drivers for it. I have been trying to locate them. I haven't been able to find the drivers for this yet. I'm hoping for eventually they will pop up. But this card is called the MI2002. Let's have a brief talk about this. Up here, this is the memory, this is bank 0. I'm doing the finger again. So bank 0, this is bank 1, 2 and 3. This is where we have the CPU, our 8486 DX2 running at supposedly 66. We haven't turned this one on again, so I hope for that. This is on a socket down there. You can have this Intel overdrive socket where you could have had an, what is it called? It's called the P24T CPU from Intel pushed in there. If you populate this, you take this one out. So there is obviously also parity check, and I'm struggling a little bit because according to the documentation, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So the 5 ones over here, and these 3 and this one should be bank 1, and these 3 are, 1, 2 and 3, these are supposed to be the parity check. Makes no sense. So there's a error in the documentation. I looked at these. These are 512, this is 4 megabyte in total, and this one, this one, this one, this one, that's the parity check. I don't know why it's sorted in like this, but it's the parity check. I can see it on the labeling because it's not the same as the other one. So these 2 and these 2 makes out the parity check for this board. This is our chipset. Over here we have a MACH match. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's from ATI. It's match 32. I have actually never heard about this. I am assuming it's a fairly good one. Over here we have 512 kilobyte of memory for the video. This is the RAM DAC for the video. If we move over here, this is the keyboard controller. Up here we have the floppy disk controller, and this is the floppy disk connector, and this is the hard disk connector. We have a few dip switches which tells about whether or not the BIOS needs to be whether or not the BIOS is read-only or read-writable and other stuff. You can find all this in the documentation for it. This is a feature where you can have second level cache put into this slot this way. I don't have it. I thought I had one block that I could put in, but I don't have it. It's not suitable for this. But you can have this level 1 cache in the CPU, but this is level 2 cache you can have up here. So that's kind of like this. This goes up here. And with that, I will try to move this a little bit to the side. And just briefly talk about the same thing that goes out here, which also has been glued all over the place. I have clicked this one in. This is not broken up here, but these lamps were broken. These stands were broken off. This one was also broken. So a lot of gluing again over here. This needs to go in here, will sit like this. Again, power supply comes up here, disk floppy bay comes here. That concludes the inner of the computer. So let me focus on this, arrange the camera a little bit around. I'll put in the power supply and the floppy disk drive. Let me find that here. It goes like this, and the floppy disk drive is actually a 2.88, so it's double 1.44. And I have fixed it, cleaned it, took it apart and all the usual stuff. This is the hard disk. The hard disk is the Corner CP3174E. I turn on the hard disk on another computer and it actually works. There's some DOS on it, there's some Windows 3.11 on it, but it's all Italian. There's loads and loads of stuff that is related to documents and other stuff. So I need to wipe all of this. More on this just in a second. So let me build all this back together again and then come back to you so we can try and turn the computer on and hopefully it will work. I'm actually ready to put everything together. And then I went through my stash of Olivetti stuff and I actually found a button and took out 2 screws in the front. This button is this one down here. I will measure this up eventually and I will produce a 3D drawing for this, so I have for future, because I have now 3 computer power supplies that's missing one of these. So let's see if we can open this one briefly up. I can't remember how to dig into it. Let me find a screwdriver, and to my knowledge it's just lifting it up on the sides like here and over here, just to loosen it a little bit. I think we're good. I think the power cable needs to go a little bit further in, and okay. I'm struggling a little bit here, but I shall manage, right? There we go. So we need to take this off down here, which has been, let me, yeah. There we go. Yeah, somebody tried to glue a lot of stuff into this. So I'm just gonna substitute it with this one. Now, obviously I need to be careful and I'm not breaking it again. like this. I'm actually not sure. Yeah, I should do it. Yep, there we go. So with that out of and fixed, let me just put all this together and put the power supply here into the cabinet. And once I've done all of that, I shall put in the floppy and hard disk bay. And I took out the memory from the other computer, and I'll put that also into the cabinet in slot number 1. And I'll hook a PS2 keyboard and a VGA monitor up to the whole thing, and then I'll come back. So let me just fix all of this. Okay, so I have put everything together, and also on the other computer, and whilst doing all of that, stuff keeps on cracking, so I'm it keeps on falling apart. So there's absolutely no doubt about that. When this was produced, this one and the other one, this was just really bad quality, but nevertheless. So let's continue. First of all, I found a coin battery, 3 volts. I will hook it in so the BIOS can be stored. It needs to be this way, yes, and it can just be down there. And I haven't taken in the network card. This is an IBM network card. I took this one out because I'm not going to be using this one if I ever going to do a network card in here. The hard disk is in, and as I said, I have looked at the hard disk contents. There's a lot of private stuff on it. On another computer, just to see whether or not the hard disk was running. I have made a backup of the hard disk. So the idea is to turn this one on. Power's in the back, everything's hooked up, so let's just try and do that. There's a beep noise, there's a green light down here. Another beep. Keyboard is blinking. Monitor seems to be working. Okay. Cool. Yes, we have a perfect. This is a 486 DX2 66 megahertz. It's passed. I also put in the extra memory, so there's 2 times 4, so 8 megabytes of memory in this. It wants me to run into the CMOS BIOS program. It sees a hard disk, but it cannot understand it, and it sees a floppy disk drive because it cannot go into the hard disk. So let me try to explain. I don't have the BIOS setup disk for this computer. It didn't came with the computer. In order to go into the BIOS, you need to have a piece of software. It's on a floppy disk, comes with the computer. The same goes for the sound card. I don't have any of these drives. I will try to locate other collectors of Olivetti computers, whether they have it or not. But I found the setup program in German, so we need to figure that one out. So the idea is, now that the hard disk is running and the computer is running, most of all, I will boot up with a DOS 6.22. And it's just because I didn't make this into a bootable hard disk. So let me Control-Alt-Delete, come back to you once it's booted on the floppy disk drive here, and then we'll put this one in and see what's on this one. And let's put in the BIOS disk, and let me briefly try to explain what's on this. Just doing a D with a break, sorry, with a P for pause. So over here there are lots of programs, and when you have this floppy disk setup, what you need on that is to have a look into auto exbat. In that file, there are some parameters that you need to set up for your computer. It will do it itself if it's the original hard disk, floppy disk drive, floppy disk. But in that one, there are some settings that will be set up before it runs the setup program, which we have here. And I hope you noticed the splash screen. It was saying this is the Olivetti M6-460. So now we're in the program. This is in German. I know a little bit of German, so maybe I can figure this out. So it's saying System Konfigurationsfehler, run setup. So system configuration error. You can have online documentation. You can do setup Dienstprogramm. So that's the setup program, the actual program. That's where we need to be. This is Festplattenköpfe sichern. This is hard disk heads, secure them. So that means park the hard disk. And the last one is just computer test. So let's go down on setup with the arrow on the keyboard. Press enter here. And then it says the BIOS is corrupted. So I'll do escape. And I can now go into the configuration of the CMOS. After that, I need to configure the date and time. And then we can do some password protection of the BIOS. So you need to password going forward, not doing that. We can look at the firmware revision. That's of all the different kinds of BIOSes that's on the board. So the EEPROM for the actual motherboard, the EEPROM BIOS for the graphics card, for the hard disk, and so on and so forth. That's all in there. And then there's a little bit of sound Diagnostisierungsprogramm, so sound diagnostic program, but that's for this speaker here. So let's go into setup configuration. And in here we have CMOS. This is just view the CMOS. This is change the CMOS. This is save the CMOS. This is undo, so go back to the original. So I need to go to CMOS, change it. And everything is completely wrong. So Diskettenlaufwerk, so this is floppy disk number 1, floppy disk 2, hard disk 1, hard disk 2, primary control adapter, video status mode. This is the frequency of the screen. This is whether or not there is a onboard sound card. This is whether or not you want to have memory between 512 and 1 megabytes. This is how do you want to have the memory tested when you start up the computer. This is what is the shadow memory of the BIOS. And this is do you want to use from 12 to 16 megabyte of RAM. This is are you compatible with the PS2 mouse, and this is a controller card, is it activated. So more or less everything's wrong. So the first one, floppy disk drive number 1, it's a 2.88 and I want to treat it as a 1.44. Floppy disk drive number 2, nicht vorhanden means it's not available. Hard disk number 1, this is IDE, so it's just standard. We don't need to type anything, it will figure it out by itself. So hard disk number 2 is not available. The primary CRT adapter, that's just the onboard one. How do you want to have the video start up? So when you boot the computer, is it 40 by 25 lines? I just want it to standard, which just gives me 80 by 25 in color mode. I'll stick to the 60 megahertz, then we come to the audio, and I have 2 selections. I have no clue what to select, so either I select 534/537 hex, or I select the 608/60B hex. That must be address areas for the sound card. So I'm just selecting the first one. And do you want to have memory available from 512 to 1 megabyte? I'm saying yes, this activate, so activate. And this is how fast do you want the RAM to start up. Testing, client, that means small, so that's the fastest one. And this is the memory shadow of the BIOS and the ROM BIOS. I'm doing both ROM and BIOS. So here you can say none of them, only the ROM BIOS you want to shadow, or here you want video and ROM BIOS. Then it's asking for the memory area. I'm saying deactivate it. Do you have a compatible PS2 mouse? I absolutely have, so that's going to be activated. And then the cache controller, that's the cache memory board that I don't have, so I need to deactivate that. Weitere Speicherkompatibilität. Sorry, I don't know what this means. This means extended memory compatible mode or something. I'm just leaving it with activate. I don't know what it is. So that's the last one. Going out. Going down on the third menu item saying Speichern, which means save. So I'm going to CMOS data save. That was that. Doing escape to go further back in the menu. And then I'm going to the date, because I want to change the date and time for the computer. It's getting a little bit late, so I think it's like, I don't know, 1700 hours. And the date is September something, I don't know, 16th? I don't know. 2023. There we go. Escape again to go back. And we don't want to do that, don't want to do that, don't want to do anything. So let's just go further back, which should now ask me to save. So it's saying you changed the BIOS settings, the CMOS settings, do you want to save it? I'm saying please take the new values and accept those. And with that, it just wants me to turn off the computer and turn it on again. So let's check out the disk. So doing this, I should be able to turn it on back again. And hopefully the settings are correct, not making any errors. And if we're lucky, it will actually boot into the hard disk. As of now, I see no errors over here. It's everything booting to the hard disk. The lights, the yellow light is up, it's booting. Amazing, amazing, amazing. All of this is network stuff related to the network card, this one, which is an IBM network adapter, and it's related to that this has been hooked up to novel network. I looked at the content of the hard disk, obviously. So just ignore all of that. Let me just briefly do /p on there. So there's a lot of folders. More or less everything of this is private, so I'm not going into any of this. And then the root of the C drive is just polluted with stuff. There is actually Windows on it. I saw a Windows directory. Let me just see it here. Yeah, so there's a Windows directory. So this we must be able to do Win. It's Windows 3.1. It's not even 3.11 for work groups. And we're in Windows, in Italian. Does the mouse is even working. So let me try to expand. Nothing here. What? There. There's the After Dark. That's the screensaver stuff for Windows. Oh, I remember this very briefly. So here you set up a screensaver for Windows. Yes, so you have all these different kinds of screensavers. I can't remember any of this. Spiral. Let's try demo. There we go. Okay, oh, nice. It seems that the graphics chip in here is actually fast. Okay, so After Dark. Besides that, I don't see much else that we... how do we get out? There, Control Alt F4, yes. So there's Applicazioni, Italian is not my best. Norton Utilities, don't want to go into that. There's some netware tooling. I have no idea. And we are not in a network. So this is just besides that, it's standard. I don't see like Office or Word or anything like that. So I have no clue. But again, I don't know what to do with this computer besides going out and saying thumbs up, everything is working, everything is perfect. And I'm ready to wrap all of this up and let me have a brief talk with you about what we have experienced. So let me move the camera around. Yeah, I know there's 4 computers on the table. I just want to make a small note or an observation. So we've been working with these 2, and today we focused on getting this one up and running. What we did, we just took the cover and swapped them around. On this, on the main board, there was a key. Just want to briefly explain. And this key actually also fits in here. So this can actually lock this cabinet. So it is correct, somebody moved these around, nevertheless. So we figured this out. Let me just briefly stay with this. This is the M4, and it's on the modular line. This one over here, sorry, I'm leaning in. This is also an M4 module line. This down here, M4 module line. 3 different cases. Just wanted to show you that I have no clue what was going on at Olivetti at that time. Somebody just, yeah, I'm gonna be nice. They made some weird decisions and strange ones. But nevertheless, this is all done. While I was bringing all this back together again, it still continued to crack. There's some stuff floating around inside it as I'm speaking. I have so much of these small pieces all around. So I just want to say this cabinet is the XP2655. And you have seen this cabinet many, many times before on my channel. And I even have many more of the cabinets. Never have I seen it so bad as this. I literally cannot use this for anything. This will go back, and I'm hoping somebody will give me other ones of these, and then I will swap stuff around, and this will become somehow spare parts, because okay, let me explain. At start of October this year, there is a vintage computer festival here in Denmark, and my plan is to take some of my Olivettis. I wanted to take these, and I wanted to have people playing around them, encourage them themselves to install operating system, Windows and games, just so the youth can figure out how difficult or whatever it was back in the days to have a game installed on a computer. I am not sure I'm going to take these 2 with me, because just transporting them, and something may break again. So I think these 2 need to stay home, and I'll bring some of the other computers. But the idea for me to have a computer and people need to install software in order for it to work is kind of like a fun thing. I think I'm going to do that at the computer festival. Nevertheless, okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. Remember, every time you have computers like these, you need to have the setup disk for the BIOS to get in and configure the CMOS. It's always a effing struggle to locate a disk. Is there anybody out there who has Olivetti computers with original disk? Please, for the love of something, make a copy, image it, put it on archive.org or anywhere else, or write to me, please. you can ship it to me. I'll pay for shipment, and I will take a copy of the disc and archive them myself and ship the original disc back to you. It is crucial that we have the discs in our community for the computers, or else you cannot get into the BIOS, you cannot configure G setup. Just forget about it. It doesn't work with Olivetti computers. That's for old crappy computers, yeah, you know, the IBMs and old computers. Doesn't work with Olivetti's. So we need to preserve all the setup disk, customer setup disk. So it's very important. So I hope you will either image them, put them on archive.org or anywhere else so that people can find them, or contact me. You know, here's my link to my email. You can write an email to me if you have any of these laying around. Don't hide them in your basement, and don't not share them with others. It's important for the community. I'm sorry, I was struggling finding this one. So that's it. These two last episodes, this one and the previous one, was kind of like a little bit, yeah, I don't know. It was out of script because it was strange and I was giving up and it was turned around and stuff. So bear with me for these two. I will come back to you with other contents. So thank you. Please give me a thumbs up. Please be so kind to subscribe. This way you get notified when I bring out new contents. And I'm almost at a milestone, a huge milestone for me personally. So once I reach that, I'm gonna do something. But that's for when the milestone is reached. So please subscribe. There you go. Thank you very much, and I see you soon again. Goodbye.